Hello, and welcome to the PC Gaming Weekspot, your recap of the last 7 days in PC video gaming. My name is Colin Mahern, and joining me this very week, he intends to work with the court and his daughter's new attorney to prepare for an orderly transition. Jesus. It's the one and only Mr. Matthew Castle.
Hello.
Hello, Matthew. All true, though. All true.
Choice of intros.
Do you know what I'm referencing?
I believe you're referencing the ongoing legal woes of Britney Spears.
Indeed I am.
Was this you casting me as Britney Spears' dad?
I think it is, yeah. Jamie Spears.
It's not ideal. It's not really how I see myself or how I want others to see me.
I won't lie, it was about 5 minutes before we were going on. I was like, uh-oh, I don't have a cultural reference. Search news. Oh yeah, the Britney Spears thing. No, I won't, that's a bit kind of sad, a bit drab. Well, like, this story is good, I suppose, for the Britney Spears fans, for Britney Spears herself, for anyone who watched that Sky Britney Spears documentary as well, which was an interesting look at the behaviours of paparazzi and all that, which the two of us lived through in the late 90s, early 2000s. But instead, Matthew...
What is this, the Britney Spears Weekspot?
Well, a little bit, for at least the next minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Okay.
Matthew, I can't imagine you being the biggest Britney Spears fan. However, you are a lover of fine tunes. So, is there any, if you could say your top 3 or top 17, whatever you prefer, Britney Spears songs, anything that kind of stands out?
Oh, God. I mean, there's so many to choose from. God, so many Britney Spears songs.
I can help you with the names if you're bit like a Baby One More Time. It was a seminal hit.
Classic. There's that one where she's prancing around on the aeroplane as an air hostess.
Toxic, yeah. That's a cracker, yeah.
That's I actually don't know if I could name another Britney Spears song.
You could. I'm just trying to think, what would be her...
Those were her two biggies, weren't they?
She had a decent number, like, what about another biggie? The one where she's in the red jumpsuit, and she has already done a thing. The name of the song is that, so she's already done a thing, and then she says to herself, oh, I've
messed up.
Kind of. So what would she then? So she would then say, like, oh,
I'm sorry. I regret my actions.
Well, she might, if you make a mistake.
I love doing that. Oh, she made a mistake. I sincerely apologise. Is there a Britney Spears song called "I Sincerely Apologise" in which she wears a red jumpsuit? I'd be surprised if there was.
What if she said "Oops"?
Oh, oops! I did it again.
There you go. Yeah, see, look, number one Britney Spears.
That was the same as "Hit Me, Baby."
That's a different song, isn't it?
Is it a different song?
Oh my God, I'm going... No, you're right, aren't you? What song am I thinking of? Jesus. Apparently, I thought...
No, they are different. No, they've... Oops, I did it again.
Yeah, no, Oops, I Did It Again is a different... I played with it, yeah, got lost in it. Oh, but yeah, no, they are.
They're different songs.
They are different songs, yeah. Yeah, no, they are.
For a second there, I thought, wait, aren't they the same song?
There's similar, similar-ish melody to it. But yeah, thank you very much, Matthew, for humouring me by playing the Britney Spears game. We'll come back next week with the Christina Aguilera variant.
I've got a feeling that we're quite light on PC gaming news this week, thus this rather large detour into Spears world.
Do you want to talk about Whitney Houston or Celine Dion or any other diva? Yeah, it is so... It is a bit light on the news front. Not an awful lot has happened. So, what we're going to do, rather than create that division, that partition between news stories that we think are important enough that need to be mentioned, but not important enough to dedicate time to, between information, snacks, and headlines and hot takes. Matthew, look, let's just bring Hugh in straight away.
Oh my god! So my info snacks for my news gob. We're not going to have those.
Well, look, we'll see. We'll get in here, Hugh. Get in.
Hello, I'm Hugh Edwards. Working in news is exciting.
Not that exciting this week, though, Hugh, I'm afraid to tell you. Because, yeah, it is. There's stories of varying. There's nothing really meaty. Like, we do love a bit of speculation here on the PC Gaming Weekspot, but even at that, some of these stories are either ones that we've talked about quite recently or they're just quite wishy-washy. Look, could you grab your news crank for me, Matthew, and open that gob? Because we're still going to have some information snacks. It's just, if you want to go in depth on any of them, please do. I'm sorry, you're just mouth agape. Here we go.
Info snacks for his gob.
I can't handle this. Having my info snacks after I've heard Hugh. It's like having your main course and then a starter.
It's disgusting behaviour, yeah, but this is just what we have to do this week. I'm afraid.
To have my mouth open when Hugh arrives because I don't want him to see me like that.
Look, who would? A well-respected journalist and broadcaster such as Hugh Edwards. You don't want to look like a blithering Britney Spears fan in front of him. So although I can imagine that he would appreciate the works of the Texas legend. I don't know. I feel like she's somewhere down there.
Is she from Texas?
It's somewhere down there, I believe. Southern. I'm going to shoot with Texas. It's fine. You don't have to comment telling me where she's actually from. I'll Google it afterwards. So, Matthew, before we get into the fun stuff, as has become customary, we have a little bit of an Activision check-in for you. I suppose maybe they're showing action. So 3 senior developers are no longer with the company. You have Diablo 4 director Luis Barriga, the lead level designer Jason McCree, and Jesse McCree, sorry, and World of Warcraft designer Jonathan LeCraft. They have all been reportedly let go. Because of the allegations that you at home or listening to this, you are very well aware of at this stage. In other Activision news, and actually talking about one of their video games, which seems
this is a hard pivot into like nonsense news, isn't it?
Yeah, it is quite.
Like, here's a load of wrong-uns. Let's talk about their new game.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like it feels sort of. Yeah, but
so we just apologise for the rough segue.
Yes, Call of Duty Vanguard is allegedly the name of the next Call of Duty. And the leaks are saying it will be revealed on the 19th of August. So, 2 days' time from when you're listening or watching this. Reports say, Matthew, that it is set in World War II. And it is being developed by Sledgehammer, who have previous in the Great War, because they made Call of Duty World War II, which was the game that had Paul Daniels in it, which is something I would never forget. Mm-hmm.
It had a character called Paul Daniels rather than the magician Paul Daniels.
Well, if I say, either way, am I not correct?
You are, but I feel like you're being misleading with that piece of news. I feel like there's a soldier who's got the made-up name Paul Daniels, but you are saying that so that our viewers / listeners get excited about the concept of diminutive magician Paul Daniels turning up in the Call of Duty campaign.
I would be lying if I said it had Debbie McGee, but I'm not. I'm just saying there is somebody in Call of Duty World War II called Paul Daniels.
I would have phrased that the game has a Paul Daniels in it.
Who's to say who the real Paul Daniels is?
I would say there's a big difference between a Paul Daniels and the Paul Daniels. I was to say, would you like to get to see a Paul Daniels? You would be like, wait, that's not Paul Daniels. Not the Paul Daniels.
But if you say
right now, you'd also be like, the man's deceased.
Yeah, so if you said let's go see the Paul Daniels,
I'm assuming it's a Paul Daniels, in which case, and I'd be like, you're right.
World War II, Matthew, are you sick of it yet?
I mean, it seems to be part of the gaming landscape, doesn't it?
Mm,
They like World War II.
they do. They do.
I don't know. I play all these World War II shooters. I do play them. I remember like when they first started doing them, and they seemed so incredibly exciting. And I guess because it felt like they were doing the kind of saving, but they took so much from like Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers or whatever, and it seemed to kind of nail that stuff so kind of brilliantly. It felt like a huge sort of cinematic gaming achievement. I don't know.
That was.
I don't know if we're just bought. If it's like, it's a bit continuously. It's just a bit sort of sordid to continuously mine these sort of real world tragedies, or if it's just I feel like I've seen every. If the cynical truth is just you've seen every variation of this imaginable now. I don't know. It's probably more the latter because I'm quite a shallow person.
Yeah, it just feels like we've gone to the well one too many times, and like unless you can do something slightly different.
The last one had
it.
stuff. Didn't it have that stuff where you were like the French Resistance? There was like the spy level, and
yes, you're right.
Walked around like flashing papers or something.
I do remember that now. Yeah,
that kind of stuff. I mean, that seems to be like one avenue into this is kind of let's tell the story of people sort of outside of the standard stories, which you clearly already know. But
that's said to be properly announced on Thursday, is it? So we'll see. Something that won't be announced for quite a while, Matthew, is whether it will be announced or not, is Alan Wake 2. So Remedy announced. Or they said during the week they didn't announce all of this because some of it is just like sales numbers or whatever else. But they said, that Control they either worded it as it either has 10 million players or they've sold 10 million. They said the next Control game, they're about to crack on with that. They mentioned Condor, which was the co-op game that we spoke about before. It's this working title within the Control universe. But the game that they said has moved into, quote, full production is also the game that many believe to be Alan Wake 2. So, I think the last time there was murmurs of this and it was mentioned on the Weekspot, it's actually the one Weekspot that you were out for. So I was wondering, Matthew.
You did one of these without me.
Oh, Matthew, tell me about Alan Wake opinions. Well, what would you like from an Alan Wake 2 after playing Control?
I mean, oh God, what would I like from Alan Wake 2? Good question. I wish I prepared an answer.
Well, okay, I'll rephrase it then, and I'll focus it more. Like, is there anything within Control that you would like to see them pluck and stick in an Alan Wake 2? If, again, this is going to be Alan Wake 2, it is speculation.
Like, maybe some of that sort of... Because Control has like a little bit of that kind of sort of Metroid-y structure to it, and it felt like they were playing with like leaving their kind of comfort zone of kind of strictly like linear cinematic storytelling. And maybe this is just me misremembering, but like I think the original pitch for Alan Wake, like way back when, was something slightly like a bit bigger and more open. Like I think it had, and this might just be my brain mixing several things together, but like this Alan Wake was announced like way before it eventually came out, and like originally it was lots of sort of shots, engine shots of like their huge, vast environments, and it kind of pointed towards something like maybe a bit open worldy. And like there's sort of there's like a hint of that in like in the Alan Wake levels, they're kind of set in quite large natural environments, even though your progress through them is strictly linear. And maybe there's something in like revisiting that idea and having something which is a bit more, a bit more open, a bit more kind of free form. That said, like the kind of story they tell in Alan Wake, or when they told in the first Alan Wake, and where their strengths lie, I think they definitely, like, the more control they kind of exert over something, the kind of tighter and better it is. So if there's a way of, like, letting go of the leash a bit, but still delivering the more kind of choreographed sort of thrills and scares, that'd be interesting. I've often thought, like, open world horror is kind of an interesting space. I mean, there was this isn't quite it, but like when they did The Evil Within 2, they had these like large hubs, and I liked the idea of like wandering off the beaten path and discovering a kind of a really great horror moment that you might have missed if you hadn't left the beaten path, and kind of having the confidence to have quite handmade scares and handmade sort of threats that people can potentially miss, because that's the nature of an open world. I'd be interested to see them experiment with a bit of that.
Yeah,
maybe.
Because as you say, the levels in Alan Wake were quite relatively large for the time, I guess. Like, you weren't going down corridors. But I suppose you could do a little half of one, half of the other. Like, I quite like the structure of the episodic structure of Alan Wake, and the TV, like, what was the name of the television show in it? Is it Bright Falls? Yeah. I quite like the episodic structure of it and the focus. So, like, yeah, I would prefer if it didn't just go full on open world.
No, I wouldn't say that, but like, I sort of I think there could be like an interesting middle ground, or the idea of being able to like drive through the twisting mountain paths to go to like a creepy cabin where you have like a more fixed thing, or if that's only wherever they choose to set it, of course. Yeah, I must admit, like, I don't have like any particular great attachment to like the fiction of Alan Wake. I like it fine, but I wouldn't be able to sort of offer any kind of, I'd like to see the story do
blank
X, Y, Z. I mean,
you don't want to see the comeback of Mr. Sketch, was it? Who was the? Is that his name?
Something along those lines. But I think they've. I say they've hit a groove. I think they've really hit like a big one game groove with Control. I felt like after Quantum Break, Control was like quite a kind of good return to form. So I hope they can kind of ride that. Whatever processes they put in place to get Control to where it is, I'm intrigued to see, how that impacts the other things they make. They talk a lot about, sort of how they're just doing stuff differently, and how, that leads to better games and whatnot. And they've got so much on the go, and they've grown quite a bit, it feels. So wait and see. But Matthew,
enough about video games. I want to talk about films that are based on video games, because did you see that Stringer Bell is going to be playing the role of Knuckles the Echidna in Sonic the Hedgehog 2? Now, you are a self-professed Sonic the Hedgehog hater. I think we can go full on. You detest the blue blur. However, I'm wondering how you can say that Idris Elba, String, how you can say that this man playing the role of Knuckles is a bad thing.
No, it's like I imagine like a fun bit of like,
it's the crossover we always wanted.
Sort of not ironic casting, but it's kind of, casting someone who's like better than the material, and it's a bit like when like Helen Mirren is in a Fast and the Furious,
Is she?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like, it's one of these sort of dumb things where you're like, oh, okay. Like, I imagine they'll get a good old paycheck. Good for them. Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard to say because like Knuckles like isn't a character at the moment. He doesn't really exist as a thing. He's just a thing in a game. Like if you were to say anything about what Knuckles is like, you just couldn't name a thing because
Tough.
No, because all the characters in Sonic are like so thinly sketched, and basically they're either non-existent or shit. Like those are your two kind of columns. So the idea of like plugging any actors into it, like it's sort of meaningless. Like it's his role to create.
I think the wider Sonic.
Whatever you're going to say is wrong.
But the genuine, like, Knuckles is meant to be tough. He's meant to, like, that's the one thing. He's meant to be tough. That's what
sounds like a good character. It's tough. They're all tough.
It's a 90s platformer. That's Mario's the same. Like, what's Mario? He jumps. Mario jumps on mushrooms.
Yeah, but Mario doesn't claim to be like a film star.
Just tell that to Bob Hoskins. God rest his soul.
It's terrible. But he's got a little bit more character in that, like, the way he whoops and everything tells you a lot about like his psychology. Oh man, good luck selling this one, me.
All right, in other news,
he's the thing I would say.
We're moving on, Matthew. We're moving on.
He clearly has joy in his heart. Like when he's jumping, he's like woohoo. Where Knuckles, what noise does Knuckles make? Does he make a noise?
In other news,
Knuckles is rubbish.
There is reportedly a GTA remaster trilogy in the works. Now, only what feels like about a day ago, we were talking about GTA 6 and all the Vice City chatter. But this was quite a meaty report from Kotaku. They said they got word from Rockstar sources that this remaster trilogy would include GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. Now, the annoying thing for us is that it's going to be out on consoles apparently in late October/early November, and then it's going to come to phones and PC in early 2022. And Kotaku added that there is apparently plans for a Red Dead Redemption remaster as well, but that depends on how well this GTA trilogy would do. I'm sure we probably said this at the time, but yeah, I would be up for this. Like it says it's a remaster. Well, they said it was a remaster rather than a full-on remake. So a shinier version of Vice City, San Andreas, and 3 rather than like a fully properly remade one. But would you, especially if GTA 6 is going to be in Vice City, kind of makes sense to look at these locations?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to say until they've announced exactly what they're going to do with them. I mean, like the idea of just playing kind of HD versions of these, like I feel like you can play a version of these in places, and like I'd need there definitely to be some tweaks if I was to replay these. Like by modern standards, the things like their action controls are just horrible. Like the shooting is terrible in all of the GTAs up till 4 changes begins to get a bit better, but these 3 are like ugh, no thank you. And very boring. They'd have to have checkpoints. I haven't got the patience anymore. I haven't got the patience I had when I was 18 or whatever to just endlessly drive across town 20 times in a row to do the same gunfight, which I lose because of the aforementioned shit controls. I think people would kind of not like these games coming to them after GTA 5 and Red Dead 2, for example.
Which makes sense. They are just 20-year-old games.
Yeah, well, that's it. But I think if the plan is like, hey, if you like these new things and you haven't tried these old things, you don't have a natural nostalgia for them, some considerable work would have to be done to make them kind of fine by today's standards. Which, it probably sounds more negative. Like the general thrust of like being able to explore those worlds again and listen to their amazing soundtracks, if they've still got the license to all that music, would be great if they could just be better to play.
Yeah. that would be they'd have to, even if it's basically the same models but like shinier versions and same environments but just a bit shined up. The controls would have to be modernized, because otherwise people's memories would be crushed.
Well, there's just bits of San Andreas like that. I got stuck on that miniature helicopter mission where you're driving like a little helicopter around, like I think you're going around like a building site to demolish it. Where I couldn't, familiar, like, I got stuck on that for weeks, if not months. Gave up on the game several times because of that. Like, them, whatever you think of their modern games, they are very like playable start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, Rockstar have never done shooting brilliantly. Like, even Red Dead Redemption 2, it's very... It's
fine.
It's serviceable. It's all right.
I actually like the shooting. I like the shooting in both Red Dead 1 and 2. But I think that's just because I love the cowboy, weapons more than like modern weapons, and it's slightly like slower combat because of that sort of historical element, I guess. Yeah, it's not like a, trying to think of what's the
Gears.
Something which is like designed purely for like shooting pleasure.
So yeah, well, I mean, again, according to that Kotaku report, it's meant to be out in late October, so maybe we'll find out about that soon enough. Something that was announced last week was Frostpunk 2. A game which I don't know if you have any history with the original Frostpunk.
Yeah, I have a very successful Frostpunk tips video on the Rock Paper Shotgun YouTube channel.
That's actually quite handy, Matthew. I was not expecting that. I thought Frostpunk was going to be one of those not for either you or I games. But the Frostpunk 2 co-director Jakob Stakalski said, quote, "What players should expect from Frostpunk 2 is a wide universe of choices, freedom to shape the society and the city however they see fit and reap the consequences. Frostpunk 2 builds on the conflicts of its predecessor, survival versus human values, life versus the Arctic frost, but most importantly, it adds a new layer that is present in many aspects of the game, be it politics, be it society, be it technological progress, the conflict between humans and their nature." No word on a release date yet. But Matthew, you've surprised me in a good way. You have played the original Frostpunk. Did it leave any mark on you? Like, would the news of a Frostpunk 2
sort of to the ice? Yeah, I mean, it's not what I would naturally play. Like, I don't tend to play kind of building or management games because I've not got the multitasking brain for them. And this was like, while it's relatively contained, like what you're building, it's a really high pressure environment, which I don't do very well in. So that's, if any prospective employers are watching this, you can ignore that. And yeah, I mean, I will say, like, it was a thing that I felt like the idea was sort of fully explored in the game. I felt like, yes, that is all the game I need to play about trying to build a city and keep it warm in an ice age. Like that, I wasn't like, oh man, I wish there was blah. So the idea of, this slightly kind of, is it a prequel? Where did I get that from? I swear I've heard somewhere that it's set, which didn't make a huge amount of sense if it was sort of set earlier in the timeline, because obviously that would suggest it's like a friendlier environment, which doesn't feel like traditional sequel thinking. It tends to be like
it takes place 30 years
before or after.
After we, quote, survive the unsurvivable.
Oh, so it's set later. That makes a lot more sense because, yeah, like I say, going back in time where there's less of an ice age, probably not as high pressure. Yeah, I mean, the stuff he talks about the, the leaning into like the conflict it creates in your population. Like that stuff, it's quite easy to see how that could be sort of expanded. I mean, it was quite well done in terms of like, as the ruler or leader of this city in Frostpunk 1, you're trying to make decisions for like what's good for the colony and what's like kind or decent. And if you kind of like upset, if you were too, you could in theory get right to the end and then be like executed by your people because you just treated them so terribly to get them to that point. You were too sort of authoritarian or whatever. And but it felt not, I wouldn't say like, I haven't played it for a while, so maybe forgetting some depths to it. And I'm not saying it's like super binary, but it was a little bit like, it felt like, are you going to be sort of nice and pay the consequences, or are you going to like do whatever it takes to survive and pay the consequences? And those were the kind of two like worldviews. So the idea of there's more complexity can be done there. Be interesting if it is like, yeah, I guess there is the question of like what happens to your people after they survive Frostpunk 1. I wonder if it'll have any direct connection to like what you did in Frostpunk,
or like Mass Effect style, you killed the Arachnite Queen, like these people.
Yeah, or just like here's how you've survived, and this hangs over your future society or something. Interesting.
That'd be good, yeah.
It's kind of like, well, or like survivor's guilt or something, because we all know we did this terrible, terrible stuff to get here. Or less terrible stuff if you watched our very popular tips video. Which
very good, very good. And the last information snack stroke headline and hot take stroke whatever this is, and this I've only included this because I think it's just it amused me when I saw it. Corey David, who is the creative director of Spec Ops: The Line, or was, they've set up a new studio with Robin Fink, who of course, Matthew, is the guitarist for Nine Inch Nails. They've already started working on the first game, and they've described it as, quote, a single-player immersive cosmic horror game with strong environmental storytelling elements. Which I just enjoyed. The guitarist from Nine Inch Nails, just the thought of him just coding. It's good stuff. So yeah, those are your information snacks, strokes, headlines, and hot takes, stroke whatever this bit was. Oh, it's not! Jesus, I do apologise. All aboard the Steam Deck, baby. Matthew, the Steam Deck doesn't get a boost from being docked, apparently. This is according to PC Gamer. When they had their hands on, the designer, Greg Coomer, told them, quote, "We didn't choose to make higher performance when docked a really high priority design target. We felt that it was actually better, all things considered, to not modify based on docked status or mobile status." So my question to you, Matthew, is, do you feel like you get a performance boost when you are docked?
What does that mean when I'm docked?
Sitting down? Like, I feel like that would be the docking of a human? Like,
yeah. Do I have a performance? Yeah, I guess I do. I mean, I'm not very good at multitasking. So, like, when I'm walking around, the only thing I'm really performing is walking. So, like, sitting down, I can just do other things. So it's quite hard to say because I don't know, like, would I be good at writing while I'm walking around? It's hard to judge that kind of work performance.
But just general, like, you can walk and talk. Surely, like, it's not
I can walk, but there's some things I can't do that would surprise you. Like,
such as
I can't walk and drink at the same time. I have to stand still to drink.
Okay.
Like, I don't like to walk and drink. I can't do that.
It's just too because yeah, you're like
yeah, I don't like that. Okay, I'll rephrase that. I can do it.
Yeah,
but I don't like to do it.
I think that's fair. That's fair.
So, and it's when you're all like, everyone's walking along and you've all got cans of drinks, and I think, oh man, I'm going to have to stop to drink and everyone's going to walk off without me. And then they'll be like, what happened there?
Whereas Matthew, don't know. No, we'll never see him again because he
That's what I
stopped.
say to everyone else. Like, should we stop for a sip? And they're all like, what? I'm like, a sip stop. Please tell me you'll do a sip stop.
So yeah, those are your again.
Maybe I could do it with a long straw.
Yeah, get yourself one of those. Yeah, big long
I can probably
swirly straws.
I can probably like walk and suck on a straw at the same time.
It's a good compromise to not get people to sip and stop and sip. So yeah, though that's your news for this week. So now let's get on to the games that we've been playing in Show and Tell.
Show and tell, show and tell. We can't afford a proper jingle. It's meant to be jingle.
Yes, Show and Tell is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we take you through the games that we have been playing over the last 7 days. And like the fact that the news was maybe a bit light this week in terms of big releases, relatively light this week as well. However, we do have the resident Assassin's Creed liker on here to talk to us about the latest piece of DLC, Matthew. So yeah, what's Assassin's Creed Valhalla been cooking up?
This is the Siege of Paris, in which you travel to France. We knew this was coming. They've always said they were going to do DLC set in Ireland, which was Wrath of the Druids, and this one, which is Siege of Paris. I wasn't really looking forward to this after the Wrath of the Druids, because that felt like just a lot more Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which by that point I'd already played about 100 hours of. So the idea of like just more of this with nothing to really identify it from the main game didn't appeal. This is, arguably it is more Assassin's Creed Valhalla as well. There's another chunk of map with, gold to collect, gold treasure markers and blue event markers and all that jazz.
Right.
What's interesting about this is the actual, the main story missions are sort of built around a series of slightly sandboxy infiltration missions, they call them, which are kind of hark back to some of the stuff they did in Assassin's Creed Unity and Syndicate, where they almost had sort of slightly Hitman-y levels.
Okay.
Which is slightly overstating it. They're nowhere near as complex as a Hitman level, but they are Hitmanish in that there is a space that you can sneak around to kill a particular target, but there are also narrative ways of reaching that target. So, in this, the first big infiltration, which I've taken some clips for this video, you're trying to get this sort of evil priest in his church. And, there's a password to get in, which you can get by going and fighting some sort of smugglers in the sewer. Or there is, a key, which was, you also hear talk of a key that was stolen by this woman. If you go and help her in a separate part of Paris, you can get that key. So there's a couple of routes in, which are sort of tied to other missions. And then once you're in there, you can get a disguise, which lets you sort of infiltrate this sort of ceremony and do a kind of a Hitman sort of signature kill type thing where, otherwise, you can still just sneak in and fight everyone and get to the person and just hit them with your sword 10 times or whatever. But there's a more narratively satisfying payoff if you sort of follow the breadcrumb trail, which I don't want to overstate how clever it is because, like I say, it's Hitmanish, but it's nowhere near as interesting as a Hitman level.
Yeah.
But compared to the regular stealth in the game, it's a bit more involved and certainly involved enough to make this DLC a bit more interesting.
Well, one of my probably my biggest criticism of the series over the last, it feels like the last, a lot of the more recent Assassin's Creeds is that you're not really an assassin. There isn't much sneaky, stabby going on.
Yeah.
Whereas you're telling me this has a bit more.
This not only has it, the whole story is a lot more sort of stealthy. I think the idea being that you're in France, you haven't got a huge army with you. You've just got your little boat. And because of that, all the missions like push you towards being stealthier. Like there are a couple of big action beats, but like this is the only main chapter of the game that doesn't involve. Well, actually, not the only. It's one of very few chapters that doesn't involve like the big castle siege scenes, which were like a regular set piece in the main campaign, which is it's basically like you storm a castle and there's like 100 Vikings fighting 100 Anglo-Saxons. It's all, it's quite big and dramatic, but it's super actiony. Like there isn't like a stealth solution to those set pieces where this doesn't have one of those. It's obviously called the Siege of Paris, and the sort of siege and ransacking of Paris is like a big action moment in this DLC, but it isn't one of those siege levels. It's more of like a cinematic background to you're trying to assassinate a person in the city while it's being ransacked around you. So it's a bit more like cinematic, a bit more like restrained, definitely puts like the assassin stuff first in a way that like Valhalla very rarely did. So that it's, I quite enjoyed this. I thought it was way better than Wrath of the Druids, which was just like everything you've just done in Valhalla, but like another 15 hours of it. I mean, this one, like it feels like there's, not more effort, but it's probably a bit more resource intensive because there's a lot of like story and dialogue and cutscenes, and these assassination levels are a bit more complex, but it's much smaller. It's probably 8 hours all told. So it isn't just another massive chunk of land for you to strip clean. And there's a bit of that, but it's sort of smaller, tighter, more focused, and better for it. Is sort of how I feel.
But it still has, as you mentioned, it still has a bit of map clearing.
Yeah, but not as much. I mean, like, there's like 4 regions, and, in my 8 hours, I had mostly cleared it out. It's, like the side activities aren't particularly strong. Like there's some new, there's like a family of like French nobles that you're kind of hunting who are kind of like the big boss character. There's like 3 of those fights. There's a bit more Zen rock piling, which I hated in the main game, and I still hate in this. There's some sacrificial altars, which are sort of offering altars either, where you kind of, which are basically just sort of glorified fetch quests. The actual side missions are pretty simple. It hasn't got many of like the interesting world event stuff, which I quite liked in the main game. So yeah, like it's definitely. It doesn't feel like it's designed to be a major bit of stodge. Actually, the other thing I should talk about is there's like a series of like guerrilla warfare side missions where you're working for sort of a rebellion and trying to sort of like build up an army of rebel soldiers by taking on these sort of small, very basic go here, kill 4 guy mission type things. I'm pretty sure they're just like endlessly procedurally sort of generated tasks. It's like go here, kill 4 blahs, and as you do those missions, you level up like the AI soldiers who go with you. That's quite poor. I mean, that probably adds a few more hours to the DLC. I only got about halfway through the leveling up because I found it so tedious. That's like the worst of Assassin's Creed. That is just like endless content generation. It's this kind of, I talked about this a bit in the review on the site. It's like, they talked about this Assassin's Creed as service game, this infinity that they're working on. And when you're doing when there is a guy who is just giving you endless go here and kill missions so that you can earn his unique currency to buy like cosmetic, new hats and things from him, that to me is like, that is what infinite Assassin's Creed looks like. It's like the Destiny factions. It's that kind of daily quest. The actual quality of the quest, it's just a task to give you something to do. There's no, there's nothing interesting in the quest itself.
Right.
That is the side of Assassin's Creed I like the least, and that's what's weird about this DLC. is it has this big wodge of like daily quests, which are exceedingly poor and boring, but it also puts that alongside arguably some of its most interesting kind of handcrafted feeling story missions. So it's kind of the best and worst at the same time. People were quite down on this DLC. I think I liked it more than most because I liked those assassination missions. I don't care for the bloat. I'm kind of happy it being a smaller focus thing. I thought the story was actually pretty good because, there are like 4 main power players and they're all quite compromised and it's quite hard to pick your way through it and where your allegiance should naturally lie. It doesn't necessarily lie by the end of the story, and there are some slightly tragic figures, and all that's quite fine and decent. The only disappointing thing there is because this is a DLC. That story, like, it only exists here. It's not reflected anywhere else. It's you go to France and you're fighting for the future of soul of the country, and then you just come home and it has no bearing on what goes on in the rest of the game. So even though the story has a couple of like big choices that feel kind of important, they're only important in the context of this entirely self-contained region, which you'll never have to deal with again. That's odd because you're like, make some difficult calls about, X, Y, and Z. And you're like, well,
they don't really matter in the big scheme.
These people don't exist outside of this chunk of the game. So, the main game was sort of guilty of that. Like the main game also had some choices and they all kind of, they add up, there's like 2 things that kind of change towards the end of the main campaign. This isn't a game which like passes on your decision making particularly well. And it's a shame because I feel like with this, they actually got some good, chewy kind of, this
actual
person
tough
I like,
choices,
but they suck. What they want to do sucks. And this person I hate, but what they want to do is kind of right. And that stuff's always sort of fun. But if you expect it to kind of like act on those consequences in like The Witcher acts on its consequences, say, you'll be disappointed.
Was it the same in the Wrath of the Druids?
The Wrath of the Druids that felt like much more of just a linear story. Okay. I mean, Wrath of the Druids really does feel like a load more stuff. It had like another secret set for you to assassinate, which took a load of time, and it had this sort of trading network, which was basically like settlement development from the main campaign, but spread out across an island. So you were doing things to like build up these trading posts and earn like buffs and boosts from them. Mm-hmm. And like, that was fine if you just wanted, 20 more hours of that stuff. And it seems that people do want that based on some of the negative reviews where people are like, Wrath of the Druids just had so much more. And you're like, yeah, but it had so much more of just flavorless mulch. Like this has less, but there's like a bit more identity to it. I feel it's not a hearty recommendation. Like if you've got the season pass, obviously play it. Would I go out of my way to spend 20 quid on this? Probably not. But will it be on sale one day for like a Game of the Year edition for 20 quid? And would I play it then? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I am of a similar mindset to you. I don't want bloat. Like, give me a more focused thing. Like, if the first DLC is 15 hours and it's just packed with meaningless bullshit, whereas you get maybe 8 more focused hours here. All right, I haven't played it. I might be being unfair by saying meaningless bullshit. But, I just, the more focused thing is definitely more attractive to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a case to be made that, like, the island setting is visually more distinct. Like, a lot of France looks like a lot of England. And Ireland had, like, you're from Ireland. It's all, shimmering emerald hills.
Grass. A lot of grass.
So, yeah, it's also just a shame that traditionally, I think Assassin's Creed has done some, like, interesting things in its DLC. There have been Assassin's Creed 3 had the stuff where you had all these mad superpowers to fight George Washington in this alternate what if history, and there was hunting Jack the Ripper in Syndicate, and you got to play as Jack the Ripper. It was all a bit kind of murky and spooky. Even Odyssey, while it mechanically didn't have any new ideas in this DLC, they were set in the afterlife and like a world of myths, and they were like visually like astounding fantasy landscapes that couldn't exist in the main campaign. This really does feel like more Valhalla, which is kind of disappointing that they didn't try something new. Well, they have, I guess with the assassination levels, that is the new thing. But it is wrapped in this very familiar wrapper. Like, if you've played Valhalla all the way through, there is only so many times that a Viking friend can say, Eivor, come and help me. I'm trying to invade X. The person who lives in X doesn't want me there. Come and help me kill X, the person who rules X. And that is like the story of every region in Valhalla. And that's what it is in France as well. And, there's a bit of difference when you actually get there, what happens in some of the regions. It isn't always sort of cut and paste. But after a while, you are a little bit like, oh, what is it? We're invading another island. Okay, off we go then.
A sort of reserved recommendation. It's...
I've got a bit of Stockholm syndrome with Valhalla because I've just I've played so much of it now that I feel compelled just to like finish off the last few bits.
Well, this is the last DLC, I think, isn't it? The last big...
of this season 1, whatever that is,
Fair. Yeah.
There's talk of like more to come.
Jesus, we'll have to send you back to whatever country.
Eivor is amazingly well travelled. Like, Norway, England, Ireland, France, America, mythical realms in the game. I mean,
that's pretty. There's
no way any real Viking ever went to that many different places. I just don't believe it.
Historically inaccurate. Lovely stuff. We are going to take a very quick break, and then we'll be back with more video games chat.
Listen to the Electronic Wireless Show, rockpapershotgun.com's PC gaming podcast.
I'm Nate.
I'm Matthew.
And I'm Alice, and every Thursday we chat about our favourite things in PC games.
That could be the greatest giants, the coolest magic, or the best mysteries.
Although Alice will have to stop me making every episode all about fish, or Anthony Hopkins, or Rome.
So check out the Electronic Wireless Show every Thursday, available on all your podcatching apps or direct from rockpapershotgun.com.
Right, welcome back. The next game we're going to be talking about is one that I have spent the last week playing, and there might be some people out there who are aware, but it's a game called Road 96. So this is a funny one, right? When I first heard of this, I think it showed up in one of the... what's Keely's thing called again? Game Awards. I think this is when
Summer of Keely.
It first showed up. It was one of the Keely's things. But it sounded incredibly ambitious to me because, to describe it, right, it is a narrative-driven game in the vein of a Firewatch, a Gone Home, a Tacoma, a whatever. But the story is procedurally generated and it is run-based as well. So, I suppose if sort of roguish elements. So, first person environment, you walk around, mostly peril free, you're picking up objects, chatting to NPCs, and you're told that your actions and your dialogue choices will impact the story. There's the occasional mini game in here as well. Quite a decent air hockey game. Big fan of air hockey, so I was like, that's good. It's a bit of Connect 4, all that kind of stuff, right? So I guess as well, it's worth mentioning that it is unlike the other games I've mentioned, and for a few reasons. Like, one reason is that it's unlike those other games because Road 96 plays out in scenes. So you're not walking around and chatting and walking and drinking in one self-contained area. and I'll go more into this in a sec. But your goal in the game is to get from point A to point B. And you're jumping from location to location while on this journey. The game, it cuts the boring travel out, and it just lets you interact with key characters at these various locations that you visit. So yeah, I kind of mentioned its roguiness, and I'm using that loosely, and in lieu of a better term. But it is run based, and to explain how it works, I suppose I have to explain the premise and the world a little more. So it is 1996, and the country that you're in, Petria, is divided politically. It's basically like a lot of the nations with two-party systems. I won't spoil anything, but essentially prospects aren't great for teenagers here. So the majority of them are trying to cross the border for greener pastures. And those teenagers that are you. So like at the beginning of each run, you choose one of the three youngsters, and then your aim is to get them across the border. But before you begin your trip, you're given like three choices, and you're told how far they are from the border, you're told how much health they have, and you're told how much money they have. Because, and this is again is another difference to the other similar first-person narrative-driven games I've mentioned, health and money are important. Like if you can die if you run out of health, and money is essential to buy food to keep you alive, or I think there are a few other applications as well where you can give money to a person, etc., etc. Now these things, they reset when you start a new run because you're a new teen, but there is an overarching story that continues on. So I suppose it's roguelite-ish rather than roguelike-ish. I should say as well, there are like 5 or 6 skills that you acquire throughout the game, and when you do, they carry on to the next teenager as well. But the real hook of Road 96 is its procedural generation, and I really didn't think it was going to work, but it does. So like these characters that you interact with, there are 7 of them in total, 7 NPCs, and on any given run, you'll run into a certain number of them. You won't run into all of them all the time. And each character has a select number of scenes themselves. But the order you come across these scenes is random. Right. I don't know if it's all random. Like I don't know if there are some ones that have to happen at the start and some that have to happen at the end or whatever. But I did talk to Alice. She wrote the review for the site. And there were some things that she saw quite early on that I saw late, and vice versa. So there is some, it is procedurally generated. I don't know, I thought it was going to be a total mess when I first heard that. But I think without it, it would be a far lesser game. Because I don't think the story is actually, I think the story is fine. I think it is, it's, I don't know, a country facing adversity, 2 sides. You've seen it 1,000 times, and the acting in the game, I think, is it's again mostly fine. There are a few ropey characters. There's a little boy that I detest, but the way it tells its story is what sort of keeps you hooked. At least that's how I felt, because there's an element of surprise when you finish one section and you're like, ooh, which character am I going to meet next?
Right.
Where is the story going to go? Like what little wrinkle of the story is going to be revealed next? Because each of the characters are also connected. Just the way they've done it is quite good, because it never feels muddled. Like a character that you meet, an NPC, is never telling you something that they possibly shouldn't. They're never referencing the past, because the character they're meeting, whilst you're meeting them maybe for the 5th, 6th time, they're meeting you for the first time because this is a new teenager to them.
That sounds sort of a smart way to do it.
Yes, like the interactions feel worthwhile. They don't repeat themselves. You don't really get much redos of conversation. You don't really get any redos of conversations. Because even sometimes characters might say to you, oh, do you know about what happened in 1986? And you can just go, yeah, I do. and they'll
Right.
go, all right, okay. Something that I don't know, when I first heard about it, I was like, this could be quite the mess. I think is probably the best game or the best part of the game. Because, yeah, there are some schlocky parts. As I said, the acting is a bit bleh. Actually, one part is the audio in the game is a bit iffy. Like, there are occasionally sections of the game where you might be having a heartfelt conversation with somebody, and then the music is fucking blaring, and you're missing out the occasional word, and it just kills the mood a little bit. And these are things that they could fix in patches. It is a small team as well, I should say. The developers. Digix Art. It's like 13 or 14 people. I think all in all, I think what they've done here is pretty good. If you like your Firewatches or your Gone Homes, etc., I think there is a lot to enjoy here.
I'm interested by the structural stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, and the fact that the story is not told out of sequence. I don't want to say that. Because there is again an overarching story, but if for people who are watching this on screen, you can see my character is talking to a cop at a petrol station. Like, I came to that quite late. Perhaps if you played it, Matthew, you would come to that quite early. Like, it's
Right.
just the way the story will reveal itself may change your opinion on certain characters, or you may find some more endearing. Whereas I may go, oh no, they're a prick, because of just the way the story is told to each other. But yeah, so that is Road 96. Those are the games that we've been playing over the last week. So now, Matthew, let us test the knowledge of one another in something we like to call Mystery Steam Reviews.
It's time for Mystery Steam Reviews. Yeah.
Yes, Mystery Steam Reviews is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where I, Colin Mahern, and he, Matthew Castle, test the knowledge of one another via Steam reviews that are a mystery. And the rules are as follows. Both I and Matthew bring 3 Steam reviews to the MSR arena, but we omit the name of the game associated with each review. Our opponent must correctly guess the game attached to each review. One correct answer equals 1 point. While both of us have 90 seconds on each MSR, we both also have help in the form of 3 lifelines. These lifelines can be used at any stage during battle and also pause the 90-second timer. Each lifeline, however, can only be used once and once only, and they are as follows. Publisher, where the hot seat haver learns the publisher of the game. Second opinion, where a second review is given to the fiery chair sitter. And genre, where the genre of the game is revealed to the one with the warm arse. Now, Matthew, before we get into the theme that we are discussing, I do want to mention one thing, right? Because we've got this. This has been drawn up a couple of times now. So, Bobby Bounty was the latest. Bobby Bounty also emailed in. We'll get to your question later, Bobby. But Bobby said that, Matthew, you should kick off over the timer, because apparently I don't pause yours immediately. I think it's pretty quick. However, I will ask you from now on, Matthew, for the benefit of your Mystery Steam reviews, could you tell me, instead of saying, can I have my X lifeline, just tell me, pause the timer and then ask for the lifeline.
Okay.
And then nobody should
That's absolutely fine. Yeah, thank you very much for watching out for me, Bobby. I would argue I don't need any help in Mystery Steam reviews. Like, kind of a big deal on this show.
So yeah, that's that bit of housekeeping done. Good.
If anything, it makes my winning record seem that much more impressive, because I'm doing it with less time on the timer.
So the theme this week is... well, it's not really a tricky one to explain. It's video games that have other real playable video games in them. The non-PC example would be Crash Bandicoot in Uncharted 4. So it needs to be an actual real video game that you can buy.
I will say, I don't think there are many examples of this.
This is something I also learned when I was looking stuff up. So in that case, we should probably do quite well in the score, but I don't know.
There's a good chance like our just 3 reviews will be the same. So
that would be exciting. Yeah, I'd like to see if that could happen. Right. Well, look, let's kick on then, Matthew. Your first Mystery Steam review is as follows. The nostalgia is real. Amazing soundtrack. 2 different modes which implements 2 ways to play levels. Plenty of collectibles. Level challenges for dedicated players. A full cast of characters with a cheesy storyline that you would expect. And that's from Winter Alex. It is recommended 8.6 hours on record. Your time, Matthew, starts now.
The nostalgia is real. So that could be... So you've got to be very careful with this, because I don't want to talk about the few games, because I don't want to give you any ideas. So I've got to talk around it, which doesn't make it for great listening. The nostalgia is real. It's got an amazing soundtrack. So it's either an old game or, annoyingly, a lot of these games within a game are old games. So that could be a nostalgia thing. You know, they're playing X and it's got X in it. Give me the publisher.
All right, I caught it quite early. Say pause, Matthew.
Oh, Jesus, sorry.
That's okay. It's all right. So the publisher, I don't want Bobby Bounty coming after me. So the publisher of this is...
Is that the inventor of the bounty?
Yeah, well, it's the heir to the bounty throne, do you remember?
Oh,
so yeah, the publisher of this is Sega. Publisher of this is Sega.
Sega.
So I'm going to restart the timer. 52 seconds now.
Interesting. Very interesting. You see, I'm thinking of something, but the 2 modes doesn't really help me. 2 modes doesn't sound like Yakuza is what I'll say. Nostalgia. This could be Sonic Mania because that's got like a bit of Mean Bean Machine in it as a boss fight, but I don't know if it is 2 modes. Could be the timelines of Sonic Generations. That's probably closer to 2 modes. I'm gonna say Sonic Generations.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
So, as you rightfully pointed out, there aren't many of these games, so you need to be careful when you're talking them out. However, you were picked up on that nostalgia mention. The publisher was Sega. So you were thinking, this doesn't sound like Yakuza. This could be a Sonic game. So is it Sonic Mania? You've ended up on a Sonic Generations. And I can tell you, Matthew, that the correct answer is Sonic Generation.
Yes.
Matthew, could I have my first Mystery Steam review, please?
Not just the best campaign the series has ever seen, but the entire FPS genre. A gritty tale of betrayal, espionage, and slimy covert operations set in the backdrop of a Cold War growing incredibly hot. Says me too. Oh, me too. Recommended 21 hours on record, 17.4 at the time of review.
Time starts now. Alright, so this tells me a lot. It's a first-person shooter. Espionage and slimy covert. Cold War. Alright. So, what if first-person shooters are set during the Cold War? Black Ops. The last one was as well, wasn't it? Oh my god, what was the last one called? Oh my god, the name completely escapes. It was called Black Ops Cold War. Yeah. So, now, I think I remember seeing this in my research. I think this is one of the 6 games that has another real playable game in it. I think I might just say Call of Duty Black Ops. I think that has like a text adventure in it. I'm going to say Call of Duty Black Ops, Matthew.
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer.
So, you thought FPS, you thought Cold War, you thought Black Ops, but which Black Ops? There are many Black Ops to choose from. You feel like there may be a text adventure in the original Call of Duty Black Ops? The correct answer is Call of Duty Black Ops. Just Call of Duty Black Ops. Had a hidden version of Zork.
Right, Matthew, your second Mystery Steam review is as follows. This is basically Far Cry, but urban. The story is pretty generic, and the world felt really bland. Not much of anything to do except parkour puzzles and killing the same group of enemies. It's fun for a few hours, but after that, it feels grindy. And that's from The Angry Pacifist. It is not recommended. 29.4 hours on record. Your time.
Played a lot of it.
Yeah, your time starts now.
Urban Far Cry. Far Cry in a city. I think this is Homefront the Revolution. Homefront was the original Homefront, and Homefront the Revolution is the one which is a bit Far Cry because you can drive around on a little buggy on the outskirts of the town. I think it has a playable version of Time Splitters because it's the old Free Radical team who are now something like, I want to say Dam Busters or something like that. I think it's this. In fact, I'm so sure it's this. I'm not going to use a clue. I'm going to say this is Homefront the Revolution.
Don't even need to. There was finality in that, Matthew. I felt like I didn't. To ask you if that was your final answer would have been superfluous. Pretty straight away, almost. You were like, Urban Far Cry, Homefront the Revolution. No messing about. You think that the game in it is Time Splitters 2. Matthew, I can tell you that the correct answer is Homefront the Revolution.
Oh.
Matthew, could I have my second Mystery Steam review, please?
In the game, I just went through the most tragic event in my life. Things are in ruins and the Empire is attacking. WTF are these tools doing going around on some tourist ego selfie stroke show? Ego selfie stroke show. I don't know how you really meant to read that, but eating lavish meals and staying in swank hotels, says Pope. Not recommended after 10.6 hours.
Time starts now. Thanks very much for that. Who's in there at the minute? Francis. Okay. The Empire is attacking. Eating lavish meals. Whew. This is a tricky one now. Nothing is coming to mind. Empire? Star Wars? But you know, the word isn't just reserved for Star Wars.
No, it is. It's copyrighted. You can only talk about Empire in relation to Star Wars.
What games that have other games in them have empirical aspects? Matthew, I'm going to use my... What should I use? What would help? Pausing the timer at 41. Could I have my second opinion, please?
This is nothing more than a Japanese emo boy car simulator with flashy graphics. I've been a franchise fan since the NES, or the NES, if you prefer, and this has me just about ready to write the franchise off as a lost cause. Do I recommend it? No. God, no.
Restarting the timer 41 now. A car What did it say? Sorry, boys driving
This is
around
what
in
a
the car.
Japanese emo boy car simulator.
So the first thing that's come to mind is, do I burn another lifeline? Does Final Fantasy 15 have another game in it? I didn't think it did. I didn't see it come up on my travels. Oh no! Final Fantasy 15. Yeah.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah, not a confident one, Chris.
So, bit puzzled by this one. Japanese emo boy car simulator has seemingly pushed you towards Final Fantasy 15, which, to be fair, is a game where you eat lavish meals and stay in the occasional swank hotel. But does it have a game within a game? The correct answer is Final Fantasy 15.
Yes!
It has. So this is a bit of a tricksy one, but I think it's true. It's got a pinball game called Justice Monsters 5, which was a separate pinball. They made it as an app, but you could play it in the game. It is technically tied to Final Fantasy 15, but it is a game that exists outside of the game as well.
Okay.
I think that's fair. And listen, if
I
you
got
think
the
it was
point.
unfair, it doesn't matter because you got it right.
Matthew, your third and final Mystery Steam review is as follows. Let's be honest, its main issue is iffy pacing, but it has an endearing and classic cast of characters and a fun magic system with solid combat. But don't forget to play other legendary timeless PS1 games that deserve the same acclaim as this.
Oh.
And this is from Greasy. It is recommended 35.9 hours on record, 35.2 hours at review time. Matthew, your time starts now.
Pause that clock.
Okay, alright, hang on, I wasn't ready for that.
Oh, come on. You robbed me of 3 seconds, you time thief.
Right, what would you like?
Give me both genre and second opinion. Give me genre first so I can get into the genre headspace when I hear the second opinion.
The genre of this game is... Hold on, I think that's wrong. I'm just going to double check. I normally write these down, but I think that is a holdover from last week. So just let me double check this on wikipedia.org. The genre of this game is a role-playing video game. Role-playing video game. And the second opinion is the epic story about a man pretending to be his dead best friend trying to stop a man who went on a rampage after finding out he was adopted. The epic story about a man pretending to be his dead best friend trying to stop a man who went on a rampage after finding out he was adopted. Restarting the timer 125 now.
Oh boy. Oh boy. PlayStation 1, that's on PC. What? A man, his dead best friend. I mean, it could be Final Fantasy 7? That's sort of that plot? But you're not pretending. You are. I don't really know Final Fantasy 7 that well. Also, does it have a retro game? It has mini games, but does it have a game? A real game that exists inside it? Final Fantasy 7 was on PC. Oh, jeez. Oh, man alive. That's difficult. But the PS1 thing, what other PS1 game is on? Adopted. An RPG. What other RPGs are there? There's only Final Fantasy. There's no other series. Just Dragon Quest, but it's not on PC till much later. A Final Fantasy RPG. Oh man, I've got to say Final Fantasy 7. I have no idea. Final Fantasy 7.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
So, the review mentioned that it was, something about play other timeless PS1 classics. Spoke about there being a magic system and, spoke about it's an old RPG, kind of, the genre lifeline, then hammered that home. In the second opinion, spoke about whatever it was, I can't remember now, but oh yeah, the epic story about a man pretending to be his dead best friend trying to stop a man went on a rampage after finding out he was adopted. You were thinking, this could be Final Fantasy VII, but you weren't entirely sure. But you've ended up on Final Fantasy VII, and I can tell you, Matthew, that the correct answer is... Final Fantasy VII!
Oh, yes.
Matthew, could I have my third and final Mystery Steam review, please?
So, this was a longer review and there are a load of pros, just to explain that con. It's a 90s game, and some of you young whippersnappers might not know that it was the law back then for all video game characters to handle like a clunky tank. Moving the man, I forgot his name, around is like trying to maneuver a cheap drone. 8 out of 10, Animal Crossing, Sherlock Holmes, question-asking life sim. Says Umili, they recommend it. Umili, they recommend it, whatever the name is, at 11 hours.
Okay, starting the time now. Ooh. 90s game. Character moves like a tank. Animal Crossing Sherlock Holmes question asking life sim. A life sim from the 90s. Obviously, you know, it's a Steam review, so you don't take everything literally. So asking questions. Gonna pause the timer at 107. Matthew, could I have my genre and my publisher, please?
Your genre is action adventure.
Yes.
Rubbish. Your publisher is Sega.
Okay, restarting the timer now. What did it say? A game from the 90s. Character moves like a tank. I don't know what's on PC. So I don't think this is Yakuza.
I mean, the
No, 'cause
90s
the only thing on
the 90s
Yakuza-
thing might be wrong.
The only thing on Yakuza is...
Could be an idiot writing this review.
The only thing on is the Yakuza Remaster Collection and then the newer games. I think this is Shenmue. And I'm going to say... because they would be the arcade games like Yakuza. I'm going to say Shenmue 1+2. I think that's the only Shenmue thing on PC.
Is that your final answer?
Yes.
You're thinking clunky tank controls. You're thinking Sega. You're thinking maybe Shenmue with playable arcade machines. A bit like Yakuza. You're hoping this isn't Yakuza. And some idiot has just got the date wrong.
Oh no.
Which I did say was a possibility. The correct answer is Shenmue 1+2.
Yes! Go on, my son. I actually think that even though there weren't many choices for us, it's quite surprising. We picked...
I'm amazed neither of us did Yakuza. I thought that was an absolute sure thing. I didn't pick it so that I wouldn't tread on your toes.
Right. Well, I thought there was a few. There was like...
What was the game in Final Fantasy VII, sorry?
Chocobo Racing, which was a sort of... So it was a mini game in Final Fantasy VII, and it also came out on PlayStation 1 afterwards. One of the Mario Kart clones of the day.
Oh, wow. News to me.
So those are your Mystery Steam reviews for this week. So now let us usher in the Screaming Man with your burning questions. Yes, burning questions is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where indeed we take your correspondence, your burning questions. You can email us at any stage throughout the week, weekspot@rockpapershotgun.com, and then we may read out what you send to us on the show. Matthew, we start off, you know, it would be a surprise. I would be worried if we didn't start off with this person. It is Mog who gave us
Bobby Bounty.
who gave us £10 sterling on the YouTube premiere last Tuesday of the video version of the Weekspot.
Very
Thank
kind.
you very
Thank you,
much. Thank you very much, Mog. Forever, just an absolute gem. And Mog said, what are your favourite single-player campaigns of all time? I enjoy a good single-player campaign almost as much as a luxurious bounty bar, especially straight from the freezer, as recommended by Nate. Nate Crowley, of course, from Rock, Paper, Shotgun, the electronic wireless show. Bounty bars are disgusting, regardless of where they come from, Mog. Awful.
I mean, like, the one thing Bounty doesn't need any help is becoming less chewable and
Rock
less
hard.
edible. It's like... Were you worried that it was only going to last you for eternity? Then why not try freezing it first for eternity? Plus, it hurts your mouth.
A difficult question. Quite an open-ended question. Your favourite single-player campaigns of all time? Because if I think of my favourite single-player campaigns of all time, I just think my favourite games of all time.
Yeah.
Like Metal Gear Solid, Yakuza. I don't know, I just start rattling
Do they count
off.
as a campaign, like...
How are we? Because back in the day, we're old enough to know, Matthew, that back in the day, campaign was a word, you would never hear the word campaign. It just wasn't a thing.
Yeah, but like it became more of a split once games had multiplayer modes.
Yes.
It's like, you'd be like, oh, da, 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 da. You know, I think this about the multiplayer mode, but back in the campaign, it's a great single player campaign, shame about the multiplayer. That's what this question makes me think of.
Is there any... I don't really know how to answer this, without just rattling off just games that I like. Like, I don't know, your favourite single-player campaigns of all time, Matthew?
I mean, like, if we're going on the definition of, like, things which also had multiplayer modes, are we doing that?
Yeah, why not? It is, I suppose it...
I mean... Back before it was got on everyone's nerves and bored us all to hell, like Modern Warfare 1 obviously was sort of mind-blowingly clever. You know, the way it had the kind of scripted missions as in that sort of single-player campaign with the sniper infiltration of wherever it was, Chernobyl, I can't remember the exact name of the town. I actually quite, again, not for some reason my head is just limiting this to
shooters,
particularly Call of Duty, because that's really, you know, not a lot of other shooters had very good single player campaigns. That was always their problem. I quite like Battlefield Bad Company's single player campaign because you had all those other jokey soldiers with you. It was like you and the Bad Company, and they all, you know, they were sort of zany. I
mean, Titanfall 2 is what I always think of.
Great.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fantastic. But
again, if we are defining campaign as
Mog, I think you maybe need to like, are you open to wider single player campaigns? If you are, I can throw. I mean, yeah, I could list like hundreds of games that I really love that have great stats that are single player only. I mainly like because that like it technically includes like Monkey Island 2. Or
yeah. So thank you very much for that, Mark.
Sorry for the slightly sloppy answer, Mark.
I feel
like we didn't really earn your £10 this week.
Yeah. Sorry. I hope we've named enough single player campaigns that we like.
We named 3.
I
quite like the space one.
I quite like the space one. That had like some kind of stealthier missions as well, and yeah, I thought that was all right.
The structure of like flying around in your little spaceship and stuff. It was kind of fun.
You could choose sort, like, you know, it wasn't totally open, but wasn't there an overworld map, and you could choose what missions to go to?
There were like some planets which were like side missions, and you could drop in there. And Infinite Warfare, it was a little bit like sort of po-faced as they always are, but it had some quite like spectacular.
I mean, po-faced to a point in that like Lewis Hamilton and Conor McGregor were part of your space crew, yeah. And Jon Snow was the baddie.
Jon Snow as well. I think there was an achievement for like, I think you could kill him before he'd done his monologue.
Oh.
He does this big monologue when you meet him. You can just shoot him in the head. And I think the achievement is like
You know
nothing, Jon Snow.
Yeah. Classic bands. Bounty Bobby got in touch and they said, "Hi guys. I've pre-ordered the Steam Deck. I'm a new dad who has no place/budget for a gaming PC, so super excited about the idea of a mobile device that gives me access to my Steam library. Feels like it was designed for me. From what I understand, it still has the haptic pads that the Steam controller had, supposedly to facilitate playing RTS or strategy, etc. games. I bought a Steam controller, it was absolute shite. Is there any way the Steam Deck could work for RTS or strategy games? Worst case, I could dock it to a monitor and play them with mouse and keyboard as God intended. But I love the idea of a controller working for them. Kind regards, Bounty Bobby." I mean, we don't know because we haven't played it.
We haven't tried it. I mean, yeah. Apparently, like, it's been really glossed over because most of the things people have, by all accounts, a lot of the stuff people have tested on it have been like Jedi Fallen Order and Doom Eternal and things like that. So quite traditional kind of controller schemes.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the screen's touchscreen as well, isn't it?
I can't remember.
It is. In their recent trailer, he's playing Slay the Spire and he's moving the cards around on the screen like that. You would think that, at least, like a touchscreen screen would... Oh, Jesus Christ. Was my take that bad?
Sorry. My keyboard got stuck in something and I was trying to get it out and then just, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
You just lost Who Wants to Be a Millionaire sound. You just played Millionaire Fail.wav.
Sorry.
Yeah, so in theory, like those kind of touch elements would work fine. I mean, it's tricky because I don't play a lot of RTS or strategy games, even with a mouse and keyboard where they naturally belong. So, I mean, trying to imagine what it's going to do for a genre I don't particularly play is...
Like, I would say, whilst this appears to be, a better version of the Steam controller, maybe you have some knowledge of how things played with that. Like, it's probably not the optimal way to play it. Like, whenever... Is it Civ? Is Civ on consoles? There are a few games. I remember the Jurassic Park game. What was it called? Evolution, was it? That was on consoles. And, like, they have, ported over a lot of those games that traditionally work better with mouse and keyboard to consoles. And a lot of them are maybe adequate at best. Because the optimal way to play it is with a mouse and keyboard.
Yeah, it's
hard
to imagine because, I feel like if you give it enough time, you can kind of get your head around most interfaces. And there are people, like I struggle with just like a trackpad on a laptop, but some people are just like, they work that thing as efficiently. If you're expecting like immediate comfort out of the box, maybe not. I imagine there's going to be a learning curve with those things.
Yeah.
But you'd think with the actual touchscreen, it would be all right. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
selecting things and shifting them around and whatnot.
But as you said, even with all the hands-on time that a lot of outlets had, Doom Eternal,
no one really
Hades,
tried that stuff.
Hades, Disco Elysium, the same games kept popping up, but not, at least from what I saw, not many strategy games.
I think a lot of people are like thinking about it in terms of like where it fits in the console ecosystem rather than necessarily where it fits in the PC ecosystem.
Yes.
And it's maybe more interesting coming at it from the PC perspective. But
thank you very much, Bobby.
Sorry, Bobby Bounty.
He's
Bounty Bobby.
He's Bounty Bobby, yeah.
We've been calling him Bobby Bounty.
I thought we were we?
Yeah, like that was his surname.
I prefer... I mean, if Bobby was open to changing their name...
Well, it's not about what you or I prefer.
To Bobby Bounty.
What his name is.
But if they're the heir to the bounty throne...
Yeah, but you can't just go around life going, I'm going to call you this because that works better for me.
Castle Matthew. Durangoutang got in touch and they said, many games have an amazing core idea, but for whatever reason, the final execution doesn't work out and the game is either cancelled or released to a poor reception. If you could take the core idea of a failed game and get someone to start it over from scratch and make it amazing, which game would you resurrect?
I would resurrect the possession game Messiah from about 20 years ago. It was made by
cancelled? Was it cancelled?
No, it came out, but it was just rubbish.
Oh, right, okay.
Well, a bit rubbish. But the whole idea of that is you were a cherubic angel, little cherub with wings, and you were in this sort of sci-fi dystopia trying to achieve whatever it is you were trying to achieve. You could possess anyone in the world. Like if you flew into someone's back, you basically possess them, and then you got their powers and their abilities. So it's kind of like body hopping hitman, sort of. Well, body
Driver
hopping
San
hitman,
Francisco.
Yeah, body hopping hitman would be a better pitch for the game than what it was. Like it was quite a standard action game. Where I think if you took that mechanic in a social stealth setting and had kind of like having to possess people. Maybe someone's already done this and I'm just forgetting something, but I don't think it's been done like that. Yeah, I think that's like, I always thought, oh, that's a really cool idea. But I didn't really like the execution of it. Like the powers they had were a bit bland. It was basically like possess this person and they can walk through this security gate because they're a scientist, or this person's got a gun. So if there's a combat, possess them or whatever. But you could do some really cool stuff with like, different abilities people have. I guess, or like in a way, that's sort of what Watch Dogs Legions was going for. In terms of like, you can play as any of these people and you get their skills and abilities, but I think you could maybe like one of the problems was it feels a bit like sort of untethered because there is no central protagonist or whatever. Where if you had, like, if you were playing as a thing which possessed people, you could maybe have a bit more of a constant through line with that kind of presence, if that makes sense. So it may feel like more coherent. I'm
struggling, to be brutally honest. I mean, like games that have been cancelled. I mean, an open goal is like Silent Hills, like what PT was as a horror game. I mean, many people call it one of the best horror games of all time. It was terrific. I would love to see what that would be. I'm just looking back over what they said. An amazing core idea. The final execution doesn't work out.
Like, not to be too kind of down or cynical about it, but like a lot of games that like make it out and make the cut have kind of so many like weird or rough edges sanded off them to make them like safe and graspable that, there's not many games come out with something which is truly like, wow, that's so fucking out there. It's everything feels like within the realm of like, oh, I kind of understand this, or you can see where it came from. You can sort of see the evolution of most ideas from what, from like genres from whatever, 10, 15 years ago. And in terms of just announcing something that's so batshit insane and then never makes it out, like I do struggle to think of anything where you're like, that's what an absurdly cool or overambitious idea. I
mean, the cancelled games is a maybe different question. Like going into, I'd love to have seen what Rockstar would have done with Agent or whatever else, but
we know nothing.
We know nothing about it, so it seems.
Yeah.
The Quiet Man. There you go. That's my choice for a game that was.
What the core idea being the kind of mix of FMV into real time action.
Yeah. Why not? I actually I suppose The Quiet Man was rubbish. But it actually I mean, the idea that you can't hear what the characters are saying and all that, that's a bad answer. Forget it. The next question we have is from somebody called Robert DeBest. And Robert says, I've just recently discovered the Weekspot. It is awesome, and therefore I'm listening back to some of the older ones to quench my thirst for it multiple times a week. Thank you very much, Robert. On one of them, you mentioned Company of Heroes 2, and something is obviously up between you and that game. What is the thing that is making it up? I've opened up my gob for the juicy details. Thanks for your answer in advance, Robert de Best. Thank you, Robert. What's your problem with Company of Heroes 2, Matthew?
I don't think I have a problem with Company of Heroes 2. I don't particularly have a relationship with Company of Heroes.
I was hoping that you were able to shed some light on this because I can't remember. The best thing I can think of is I mentioned it during an information snacks bit and just said there's no point in us talking about it because neither of us have anything to say. Now maybe Robert took that as me saying we fucking hate Company of Heroes.
Oh, right. It's like, listen, I've said what I'm going to say about Company of Heroes, when the reality is we've got nothing to say about Company of Heroes because we're too dumb to play it.
Yeah, no interest, don't care. But if you love Company of Heroes, crack on, Rob.
I'm so sorry that you've been waiting for this juicy anecdote. Like, oh yeah, okay. Like the art director from Company of Heroes, ran over one of my cats.
It was blood everywhere. It was a vicious scene. Yeah, horrible.
And he started drawing it for inspiration for the next game. He was like, "Oh, this is great."
No juicy details, I'm afraid.
No, I do feel bad for people who listen to or watch the Weekspot who are into strategy games because they definitely don't get a lot of nutrition from this.
But occasionally when a Desperados type comes out.
Oh yeah, well, there's tactical turn-based is slightly different. Like we'll talk about that endlessly.
It's close enough. Those are your burning questions for this week. If you have anything that you would like to say to us, make the man scream while doused in fire, email us weekspot@rockpapershotgun.com.
Did you make the man scream?
I did, yeah, he screamed.
Oh, no, I managed to miss that.
Yeah.
Can you make it scream again, just for me?
Look, go on. Is that enough?
Yeah,
you happy with
enough.
that? All right, good. So that just about does it for this edition of the PC Gaming Weekspot. Thank you very much, dear listener, for listening, dear viewer, for viewing. If you want other Rock Paper Shotgun stuff, like Twitter and all that, look, this is the plugs bit. I'm going to do the plugs bit. So you can follow us on social media. I'm at Colin_Hearn, Matthew's at Mr. Basil_Pesto, and Rock Paper Shotgun is at Rock Paper Shot. You can also talk to some like-minded folks on Discord, discord.gg/Rock Paper Shotgun. If you want to watch the Weekspot, head on over to YouTube, youtube.com/Rock Paper Shot. Or if you want to listen to the podcast version of the Weekspot or any of other Rock Paper Shotgun podcasts, search for them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. If you want some Rock Paper Shotgun threads, which I think is what young people call clothes, go to store.readpop.com, click on the RPS logo, you'll find a couple of t-shirts there. If you want to support the website, go to rockpapershotgun.com/subscribe and sign up for one of the plans. You'll get an ad-free website, extra podcasts, extra articles, all that good stuff. But for all of your PC gaming needs, keep it on rockpapershotgun.com. So another Weekspot in the bag, Matthew. A quieter week in video games. But I have a feeling that next week we're going to have a few things to talk about. So
yeah,
we'll see. Be good. Well, I know. I'm just fingers crossed mainly. We will it into existence. So now it is time for my least favourite part of the show. This is the part of the show where I bid the listener, the viewer, adieu. Say goodbye, Matthew Castle.
Goodbye.
And say goodbye, Colin Mahern, Sloan Gafone.